Hey y'all, I am so excited to have Rebecca Gill here with us today. Rebecca is a self-proclaimed accidental entrepreneur. I love that title. And she's been in the industry, in the sales and marketing industry for over 20 years. And I actually consider her to be an SEO expert. And I don't use that title flippantly. She is phenomenal. She offers SEO consulting. She offers one-on-one SEO coaching, online SEO courses. She hosts an SEO podcast, and she teaches an on-site actual SEO boot camp. So you are in the right spot if you are excited to learn even just that next step of SEO beyond a plugin. So I'm going to give you guys her website. I want you at the end of this to please visit her website, connect with her for consulting, and see how she can best help you, because she loves teaching, and you guys, you're going to see that today. So again, Rebecca, thanks so much for being here with us. I'm so excited to learn from you.
Thanks for having me. Hi everybody.
Awesome. I'm going to ask you, let's see if we can do this. I'm going to switch screens here and have you go ahead and share your screen and share with us all your goodness of SEO beyond a plugin.
All right, let me go into full screen. Is everybody seeing that okay?
Looks good.
Okay, all right. So I have done this presentation before, and I like to do it because it is a really good overview, but with meat and with some really good takeaways. And it does have a lot of current best practices for SEO, which most people are not even aware of. Okay, so in the old days, SEO seemed so easy. I started, as Kori said, I started with SEO 15 years ago, sales and marketing 20. And it was like, you've heard about cowboy coding, and that was us in the old days of SEO. I mean, we did crazy stuff, and magically you could just get to page 1 and rank. But then, it just, things didn't quite stick that way. But when we were there, we could see page 1, we could get there. We had all of these dreams, and we had all of these expectations, right? And we were given the kind of the keys to the castle, and we could do whatever we wanted to get to page 1. And there was some crazy stuff that we did to get to page 1. And it was really stinking easy back then to rank, because you just had to know a few of the basics. And why was it easy? Well, desktop was the only search. People only searched for one keyword. Maybe they searched for 2, but there was no more than that. We could rank with 300 words on a piece of content. That whole not provided and those Google reports didn't exist. And when we actually saw in a report that we were ranked number 1, we were actually number 1. I mean, like I said, it was beautiful back then. Those were definitely the good days. But then life started to change. Over the last, really, I would tell you 5-6 years, things have shifted. I've run my agency for 9 years. And when I started with the agency, SEO was still pretty dang easy. But the economy wasn't, but SEO was. And then things started to shift. The technology and the algorithm that Google used became much more complex. Google continues to make updates. They're updating the algorithm daily, actually. They do make major changes, a couple times a year, but they do daily tweaks, and that's kind of hard to keep up with. They started giving out penalties. That stinking knowledge graph came, where it takes over the page 1 search results. Yeah. Voice search came out, and people started to really shift the way that they're using search. Mobile indexing started. That just really hit, and Google's moving the way it indexes websites from the desktop versions over to the mobile versions. And then finally, in just the last few weeks, Google started rolling out a not secure warning in Chrome. That's a lot of changes, and it can make people really feel overwhelmed with SEO. It can make you feel like you're chasing that green dot in the Yoast SEO plugin, that you're not making any progress, that you don't have any control, and that your life might be stuck with pay-per-click and Facebook ads. But even with all of that and the downward slide that you may feel like you're in, I'm going to show you that there's a lot of upside to it. Even though we have to deal with things like lack of data and a focus on those plugins and all of those penguins and pandas and the knowledge graph and personalized search and now semantic search and malwares. I mean, there's just so much, right? but don't feel like you are spiraling down a hill and you do not have control of your destiny, because I want to show you that you really do. I want you to know that you can have success and with SEO, and you really can excel with it. I taught myself SEO 15 years ago. I've continued to teach myself SEO, to this day. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. I was the kid in remedial reading in 5th grade. Barely made it out of, I swear, high school, and didn't get myself together until I got to college. And that's why I always start with, because I know SEO can be intimidating. But if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I always want to remind people that they can move mountains with SEO. They can win at search, and they can bring in lots of traffic, and not just traffic, but really highly targeted traffic that really pertains to your website and who you want to serve. So how do you do that? Well, for me, and for what the information and the education that I give to people, it's just about really finding that right recipe. It's the process, it's the strategy that you're going to put into place to make sure that your SEO is a success. And it's the heart of that recipe is focusing on the user and making sure that you are helping the user at every stage of their journey online. And that's through their awareness, their research, their final action that they're going to take, any of that step in that process. We want to have SEO there, and we want to make sure that we're focusing on that user. So what is my recipe for success? Well, guess what? It's not green dots. It's not green dots at all. I love the Yoast plugin. I think that the Yoast team is fabulous, smart people, but that plugin is just a tool in an overall process. And a lot of times people get caught up with that plugin and they forget everything else about SEO, and then they don't make progress, and they get really frustrated. And that's something that I've really tried to change over the last couple of years as I've spoke at conferences and done online training. I want to drill home this process to people so that they understand it is a engagement, and it's not just something that is a one-time event like a plugin that you put in a couple of fields and you make a couple of tweaks and you're done. That's not what it is. So this process that I'm showing you is the same flow that I've done for 15 years. It applies to small business, big enterprise, B2B, B2C, in any industry, blogs, websites, stores. It applies to all of them. And the reason it can be versatile is because you're not focusing first and foremost on you. You're going to focus on who's coming to your website or your blog. And so it's broken into 3 phases. First is research, then we plan, then we execute. And this is something that takes months of time, not something that's going to take a week. Could you condense this down in a week? Yes, but your eyes would go buggy and you would want to poke your eyes out. So I don't want to give you that expectation that you're going to get all this done in a week. It's something that you should really allocate weeks to or months to. And then once you kind of get through the process flow, you're going to continue to go through it again. So where do we start? We start with that research bucket, and it's really about asking questions about not just you, but also you and your target market. Who is it that you are trying to get into your website or blog? What makes them unique? How do they struggle? What do they struggle with? What kind of questions do they have? What do they need help with? And then you start looking at yourself and you go, well, how can I answer any of that? What kind of superpowers do I have that I can give back to them to make sure that I am solving their problems and answering their questions? And you may not know all of those answers to the questions that I just threw out at you. But one of the ways that you can learn the answers to those questions is to look at existing data and history. There's a lot of tools that have great data and history, like your Google Search Console or your Google Analytics. Both of those will give you information that you don't even really realize it's there, but that can help you answer the questions as to what your target demographic really wants to see, and even what Google sees and views your website currently. Once we start to have some information with existing history and data for you, then we start to look at your competitors. You can deep dive your competitors from their top pages to bring in traffic or URLs or posts to the actual keywords they rank on, changes in their keyword history, where their most traffic comes into the site from specific keywords, how competitive those keywords are. That information is now available to you on the web. And it's really important that you embrace that data because it can help you really make better decisions and better position yourself. And so I always like to have, as part of that first research and investigation phase, your competitors. And when I say competitors, I'm not talking about who you think your competitors are. That's a great place to start, but you need to look at specific tools, and I'll mention some later, that show you who's your online competition, because a lot of times that's much different than who you actually think it is. So once we have some good data to kind of use as a reference point, then we go into the planning stage. In the planning stage, we start to look at all this information and going, okay, well, so I see all this information and I have this data. Well, how does it relate to my website or my blog? Well, we look at that data and we say, well, of all this information I see, what types of phrases would I think that I might want to focus on? And by phrases, I don't mean just one word or two words. It could be one word or two words, or it could be 6 put together in the form of a question. And what I do is I just pull all of those out and I drop them on what's called a seed list, which is basically an Excel spreadsheet with one column, which is kind of just brainstorming, right? I just have a central place to house all of that information. And I keep adding to it as I'm going through that research phase. Once I feel like I have a good solid seed list, which is like my wish list, I do a sense check. So I put that into a tool that will give me search volumes on a monthly basis. And the reason I do that is because I really want to make sure what I think is, worthy phrases, the actual general public thinks as well, because they use them. Like I said, I've been doing this for 15 years. Keyword research never ceases to amaze me because what you may think the general public searches on and what they actually use in search are a lot of times not the same. People are really weird with some of the things they search on. They've got a lot of fears. They got a lot of little quirks, and you only really get to be able to see that is if you do, good, strong keyword research. And that's why we pull search volumes, because it's a sense check.
Rebecca,
yes.
Can I chime in there just for a second? Because I actually have a really good example of that. I had a client who they do window treatments. So blinds, shades, and shutters.
Uh-huh.
And I could not for the life of me think that the average person knew to call them window treatments. And they kept saying, yeah, we need window treatments all over our website, sprinkled throughout our website. And I kept saying, well, so basically the client and I just kept going back and forth because they were so close to the industry. They knew that word was so popular within their own industry and their sales team, and that's just what everything was called. And I kept trying to tell them, well, I'm not sure. Can we do some research on it? Because maybe I'll be proven wrong as well. Maybe that is a popular search term.
And
right?
I'm quite sure that you were not.
You're right. So, but we did find that as people started doing research, they became more educated on window treatments, and then they did start to use that key term, but we certainly needed to have other key terms in there as well.
Yeah, and that's part of that buying journey. And another, and it doesn't matter what industry it is. People have that journey with them on the web. And so an example is I've been working with a plastic surgeon recently. I actually have 2 plastic surgery clients, and when people are starting to look for, plastic surgery options, they don't even maybe know that that's what they need yet. They're looking for non-surgical, options first. They may be just saying, okay, well, this is what's wrong with my body. What does this mean, right? They still don't know what the actual terminology is. And they just it's much more generic searching and just like kind of saying, here's my issue, right? Then once they start to do research, then they start to get more technical terms and they're like, okay, so what I have, other people have, and this is the phrase for it. Then they finally start to say, okay, well, now I know what this phrase is. What's the treatment? Here's the surgery. Here's what the surgery is called. And that's an evolution in search. They're not ready to actually probably pull the trigger until they get to that surgery name. And now they're comparing actual doctors and testimonials and, references and things like that. But there's definitely an evolution to their search process. And when we build up that seed list, we want to make sure that we're thinking through that customer journey and including all those. And you'll miss some of them, which is why we do those pulling those search volumes and get to use those tools to be able to get some variance, because now you start to see at the various phases where those search terms might apply. And again, it just like your window treatment, it is across all industries, big or small websites, big or small companies or blogs. People have an evolution in search. Okay, so then once we get all of the search volumes back and we can kind of see what might be total losers and what might be just like totally crazy, we start to look at that list again. And now we start to say, okay, I see the list. I see I've got a lot of options. But really, let me narrow down this list to what's really going to work for me and my target demographic. And a lot of times it's you just having a gut feel for your industry or for whatever you're doing, your client, and trying to pick through those phrases to say which ones are going to be the best. Some of it's art of data, and some of it's just, you know, your gut and what you think really needs to be done. And then we whittle the list down. Once we have our final selection of what we really want, now we got to figure out what to do with those keywords. And unlike what a lot of people do of taking a snowball of keywords and just going whoop, and seeing what sticks to the website, we don't want to do that. We want to have a solid plan. We want to have a roadmap, because when we create that roadmap of keywords to content, we know where keywords lie on the website or blog, and so does Google. And when Google knows, Google will use it. So what you do is you literally say, okay, if I have 20 keyword phrases that are really important to me, where would these live on my website? Do I have an existing content for this? Yes. So let's match them up. Let's create a roadmap for that and say these 3 keywords belong to this URL. These 3 keywords belong to this URL. Well, now I've got 4 keywords and I've got no content for it whatsoever. But that helps create a plan, and you use that this keyword association to URL to match up what you currently have, find your gaps, and then create basically an editorial plan of what you're going to continue to work on and create. Now notice we haven't created any content yet whatsoever, right? We've been doing research and planning. We've been setting the stage and building up our foundation for success. Once we have all of that, now we can go over to this execution phase where we write quality content. And we make sure our quality content has a solid outline, and that outline aligns with the keyword phrases we've selected for this piece of content. We write our content for the human, right? You have to create it first for the human. Then we use tools like the Yoast SEO plugin to help us optimize it for search engines, keeping in mind we never compromise the user experience for SEO. And then once we have that content, it's been written, it's been optimized, we've published it, we're feeling good, we want to walk away, we can't walk away yet. We need to look at the content and we need to figure out how to kind of promote it online. Social media, email newsletters, there's a lot of different ways that you can get your content out in front of people so that they can see it and the search engines can see that other people are interested in it. And that's the process. But when it's all said and done, you need to wait a little bit. Then you need to see what really worked, because you're going to have winners and you're going to have losers. SEO is like everything else in life. There's not 100% perfect, score. It just really isn't. You're going to have good stuff. You're going to have bad stuff. And you need to look back at it and go, okay, well, here's my good stuff. What characteristics and qualities does this have versus the bad stuff? And it could be you, it could be things outside of your control, but you try to figure that out, and then you take what you've learned from the good stuff and you repeat it. You take the bad stuff and you improve it. And then, that's your process. And you're going to do this process over and over again, and each time you'll get better at it, and each time you'll expand out your reach, and you'll continue to grow your dominance on the web. And again, this is not something that is real quickly done, but it is something that's really important because it helps put you far above whoever you're competing with online. Okay, so I had said earlier that we ask questions about ourselves and about those who are coming to our website. Here are some of those questions that I rattled off, and I put them specifically in a slide so you had a takeaway. Okay, so things that I mentioned earlier. Who are you? What do you do? What makes you different? Who do you compete with? Who do you serve? That's probably more important than anything. What problems do they have? What questions will they be asking? People ask questions on the internet, whether it's a true question or whether it's a portion of that question. That's what they're doing. Some users actually put please and thank you when they're searching on Google, which it cracks me up, but people actually do that. And then once you have all of those earlier questions answered, now start to connect those together. How can you help answer those questions? What content do you have on your site or your blog that might be able to service those users that have all of those issues and those angsts and those challenges that you can help resolve for them. So I asked you, and I told you to do research and some competitive investigation. I want you to collect that data so you can make better decisions. Where do I go to get that information? Well, I go to Google Analytics. I go to Google Search Console. Google Search Console and Google Analytics are different, keep in mind. Analytics shows you what happens on your website. Google Search Console shows you what happens in search. So people might actually have you pulled up in the search engine results page because you're number 5 page and never actually get to your website. So they wouldn't show up as an active search query producing traffic to your site. But it's still important because that helps us know that those are possible search terms that you are potentially a good fit for, that Google kind of likes you for, but you don't have the best content for. And that gives us a great starting point to kind of build from. It can be low-hanging fruit for you, or it can be an epiphany that goes, a light bulb that goes off that says, I haven't even thought about these, but this is great. I really need to think about this and incorporate this into my future movement. For competitive research, I love using SpyFu and SEMrush. I could not live without SEMrush. Okay, so I talk about competitive research a lot. I keep preaching it. When you figure out what your competitors are doing right, it gives you a launch pad to do better. Once you know what they're doing and what they're working on that's producing success for them, you can look at it and go, well, I can do better than that, and definitely you can. So you definitely want to think through the data that you're seeing for them, relate it back to you, and kind of match that up to say, yep, this applies to me, and I know more. I can produce more. I can make better. I can really put my content above theirs in search. And you would be surprised as when you start to view content that way online and competitors online, how easy it is for you to be able to make progress. Okay, so I also mentioned building that seed list of preferred keywords, right? I want you to pull the search volumes for those preferred keyword phrases, and I would encourage you to use tools like KW Finder to figure out the volumes of those, who's ranking on page 1, the SEO difficulty of those, and Google KW Finder will even let you see questions people ask on Google, auto completes in Google, so it's a really excellent tool. If you don't want to use that tool, there's a number of other ones that you can use as well. Google's got its own AdWords tool, and that used to be my go-to tool until I discovered KW Finder, and then I kind of fell in love and never looked back. But it's that process of investigation and making sure that we're using data to help us make better decisions. Okay, so I have a number of hat tips in this presentation. It's things that I want to call out and make sure that you're aware of. First one is we have reached a point with SEO and online search that 50% of all search queries on Google are for 4 words or longer. How crazy is that? Because remember what I said when I first started doing SEO, they were only like 1 or 2 phrases, right? Or keywords. And everything was really short. And the reason it was really short back then was because Google kind of sucked. It could not give us good results for anything that was complicated. Well, that's changed. With semantic search, Google can be very complex in how it looks at a user's inquiry and how it matches it up to information that's available on the web to bring that into search. So when you're thinking about those keyword phrases, keep that in mind because it will definitely make a difference. Okay, so the next hat tip is don't forget to think through the buyer's journey. I've been saying that verbally, but I really want to hit home with you in the fact that we all go through that cycle of awareness, consideration, and then our final action. And our search terms are going to change as we go through that. And here's an example that I gave yesterday doing a webinar is I moved recently into a brand new home that we custom built on a farm, and I like to do vintage purchases. I like to reuse, recycle, and repurpose. Well, I bought 100-year-old doors that are very, very thick for my home office. The problem is like the week before I was supposed to move in, my builder contacts me and says, what am I hanging these doors up with? I'm like, well, what do you mean? You're the builder. He said, nothing I have locally is going to hang up these doors. They're so thick and large and big, the normal hardware we have would not work. And the hardware that we would normally purchase to put on the doors, like the handles, isn't going to work either, because these are vintage doors and the holes that are in the wood don't match up to anything that's currently used on the market. What's a girl to do? Well, this girl, being 4 hours away, is going to go to the web. I start to search for both issues, right? Both products that I needed. My search phrases from the beginning of awareness that I had a problem when the builder called to the middle of where I was really starting to get good research and having a better understanding of what I needed, to the point of me taking action, definitely varied. I had no idea what the heck I was supposed to search for at the beginning. I was just randomly throwing stuff in. Then I was like, okay, I'm seeing some trends here with some words. This is really what I should be searching for. So that kind of became my middle process of, now I know what I'm searching for. Does it have the specifications? Will it be thick enough to manage my door and things like that? Well, is it the dimensions? Are the handles long enough to be able to really, reach it? And so once I got that and I knew exactly what I needed, now I needed to have somebody who could do quick delivery. And quite honestly, this young lady right here, maybe middle-aged lady, did not care how much that stuff was going to cost, because I needed to move into my house. I was living in an RV at the time on my property. I needed a house with laundry and an office and a bed. But that was the evolution, right? I completely shifted from being clueless to what I needed to having some education to I'm ready to make that purchase, and I need something that's in stock, that's got quick shipping, things like that's reputable. But my searches changed as I went, and that's something that you need to keep in mind, because you want to grab people at all phases of that buying journey. Even if it's not buying and they're just getting information from your site, the same theory plays in, and it still exists. Okay, so the next hat tip is you can discover great keyword options by using the tools available on the web. So Google Keyword Planner, KW Finder, which is my favorite, Google Autocomplete, which is as you slowly type something into the search box, Google comes back with a list. Great seed list building right there. And then the Google's related searches, which are at the bottom. I have literally spent 2 hours going just on the searches of what's in the bottom of the page to build up a seed list of keywords. I just keep clicking on those and going from one to another to another to another. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like Christmas morning of keywords. There's so much information there. And you might think, if you've never built a seed list before, that it's going to be really challenging. But if you start to use tools like this, you'll be surprised that you'll see keywords everywhere. They're everywhere all around you, and you just need to kind of open your eyes up so that you make sure that you pay attention and that you notice them when they are in front of you. Okay, so I said earlier, don't use a snowball effect and just throw keywords at your website or blog. I don't want you to do that. I want you to make sure that you're not sending visitors in circles or Google in circles. I want you to create that map of keywords to content, right? Make sure that you know exactly where the keywords should be on your website for search engines to come to, and that that you create that map. I'm not saying if you're selling WordPress themes that you can't mention WordPress themes throughout the website. But what I am saying is you need to have a destination page that when you want anybody, including the search engines, to go to a page or a post about WordPress themes, you know where it's at, and you send all the signals possible to tell Google that's where they should go. That's what I want you to do with your little roadmap. Okay, so another hat tip is if you have a very large blog or website and it feels out of control and you're not really sure where keywords lie or what content you have, use a tool like DinoMapper or Screaming Frog to be able to spider your site and collect all of that information for you and drop it into an Excel spreadsheet. It's an amazing tool. DinoMapper can even pull in the data for you and the content if you want it to. But they'll give you things like your word count, your meta titles, your H1s, your H2s. It's amazing what you will see once that data is aggregated together into an Excel file for you to actually start to see trends. And because you'll have it all listed right in front of you, and it's a very powerful tool. DinoMapper is a paid-for tool. Screaming Frog has a free version that works wonderful. Okay, so my next hat tip is Semantic Search. That is the current day search. It's ruling Google's search engine results page. and you need to use it to your advantage. And I'm not telling you that you need to be an expert at semantic language or coding or anything else, but I want you to start to think of things differently. So this is an example of semantic search. So say I have a blog post that's about mice. And this was my example yesterday when I was doing the webinar, so I came to my mind. Am I talking about like the mice that I use for my computer to move my mouse around on the screen? Am I talking about the mice that are existing in my barn that I need some barn cats to go take care of for me? You know, without any type of other signals, Google really doesn't know. But with the nature of semantic search and Google's ability to digest the content on the page, it will start looking for other things and other bits of information to help it know which mice I'm talking about. And the cool thing is when my blog post starts talking about monitors and keyboards and comfort level with your hand, it can say, I think she's talking about a computer mouse. She's talking about the mice you use for a computer. Now, if I were to talk about poison or rodents or disease or cats, Google might say, I think her blog post is about the actual physical mouse that's got fur and that runs around and that's kind of creepy, right? But it's smart enough to go and use those two bits of pieces of information to figure out what my content's about. It's also smart enough to match that up to the user's search and how I search for the word mice or mouse. What did I search for beforehand? What have I already visited? And it collects that data to try to match everything up together. Now, that in itself seems more creepier than the mouse I just described that's in the barn, but that is today's search, and that is how smart Google is. You, as a marketer, needs to make sure that you are thinking about that as you're writing your content so that you can truly help make sure that Google can understand semantically the nature of your content and how it can best apply to someone on the search engine results page. Okay, so next, when I talk about advancements with search, we can't ignore the Google Knowledge Graph because that has been dominating page one results in search engines. And I want you to remember that a lot of that's driven by questions. And these are real questions. How do I build a website? Where's the closest Starbucks? Is mac and cheese healthy? How many centimeters are in a meter? Those last two came from my kids. No one that I know of has never searched for what disease do I have if blah, 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 or why is this blah, blah, blah. You know, we try to self-heal ourselves off of a Google. These are the kind of things that people are asking, and look at the length of those, right? Remember I said that 50% of searches are over, I think it was 4 words. Look at those. Those are all over 4 words. It shows you the nature of our search shifting, and that's because we have voice search. It's because Google's smarter, and we know that we can type in longer questions, longer search phrases, and Google's going to give us a really good results back. All right, so another hat tip is as you're thinking about writing that quality content, keep in mind the length. The average piece of content on the first page of Google is about 1,800 words. Remember I said at the beginning of the presentation that back in the day I could rank for 300 words? I could. Well, those days sadly are gone. We have to have longer content. Now, when I say longer content, I don't want you just to fill the page with like random text like we did in high school in our essays to make it fill the actual piece of paper. That's not what I'm talking about. I want you to explore a topic in more depth so you can elongate that piece of content so that you're thoroughly covering the topic at hand, which will make your piece of information better than your competitor. That's what I mean when I say longer content. It's not fluff. I want you to produce meat, but meat with a purpose so Google can say, without a doubt, yes, this is the best piece of content on the internet. Okay. Create great content. What is that? It's unique, it's fresh, it's high quality, it's long form, and it's super strong on usability. You write for humans and you optimize for search engines. And that if there's ever a question, usability and serving your human always trumps serving the search engines and SEO. So my next hat tip is about subheaders. How many people use subheaders in their content? That's H2, H3, H4s, right? It helps break up that longer piece of content. It helps create an outline for your content, and it helps Google better understand the nature of your content and where different keywords might reside within a piece of content. The problem that we have is a lot of times when people are entering content into WordPress or other CMS solutions, they're using those headers incorrectly. They're either using all of the same header, which provides no structure for the search engines, or they are using the size of those and the colors of those to dictate where they go, to make it pretty. Well, that doesn't serve the human and doesn't serve the search engines. Both human and search engines and screen readers added into the mix all want you to have structure, and it's called semantic HTML5 header usage. Google that, make yourself very knowledgeable. SEMrush has a wonderful article on it. Understand what that is, because that helps create an outline for your content for both humans and search engines. And when humans understand your content more, they are going to reward you. And when search engines understand your content more, they will reward you with ranking and traffic. Okay, another hat tip is WordPress users should use Yoast SEO to help them optimize content and metadata. People always say, well, what WordPress plugin do I use? What about this one? What about that one? I'm telling you, I suggest Yoast. Why do I suggest Yoast? Well, because the head of Yoast is an SEO consultant first and foremost. He is very active within the SEO industry. And I'm not getting any kickbacks from the Yoast team whatsoever for this. I say to do this because I believe in the plugin. I'm only going to use a plugin that I know is written by SEO consultants that know what is happening with Google, that knows in advance what's coming down the pipe with Google, and that are active within the SEO community so they know what's needed. That's why I use that plugin. I know there's a lot of other ones that are getting brought out, but a lot of those are code-based. And the developers don't know SEO. They're just kind of doing copy and code pasting from other plugins. You need somebody who's got your back and who's going to keep you out of trouble. And that's why I love the Yoast SEO plugin. But keep in mind, it is just a tool trying to give you tips and trying to keep you on task while you're optimizing. It is not the end all and everything that you've got that you need for SEO. Okay, so while we're on the subject of Yoast, let me just clearly say, do not chase the green dots. Green dots are there, and that affirmation of yes, you're doing the right thing, or no, you're not, those suggestions that Yoast gives you, those are there to help you optimize content. They don't always have to be green. Not all of them have to be green. You don't have to force them to be green. You just need to review them to make sure you haven't forgotten anything. A good example of that is it will encourage you to make sure that your keyword is part of the image alt text. But guess what? When you force your keyword in, 99.99% of the time, that becomes keyword spam, and it works against you because you're not servicing the user, you're not servicing screen readers and accessibility, and you're not serving the search engines because you're not helping them understand what that image is. So take those messages with a grain of salt and understand when you're supposed to use them and when you might be overusing them and hurting yourself in the process. Google's got very little tolerance for spam and things that hamper accessibility. Okay, so what I gave you all things to be concerned about, but when you go to optimize content on your CMS, like WordPress or Wix or Weebly or Squarespace, what really matters? Here's the things that really matter today. Clear and concise titles that use your primary keyword phrase. Remember, you can have multiple keyword phrases per piece of content, but the primary one needs to exist in that title. You want short as possible URLs, but you still want them to create URLs that include that keyword phrase. You want to naturally use your keyword within the text. You don't chase a density number, meaning how many times that keyword's used, because Google doesn't use that as a metric anymore. You need to make sure it's natural and it's weaved in appropriate places. You want to have semantic language used to help support your efforts. Semantic, think back to the mice, right? My monitor, my keyboard, my comfort level with my hand ergonomics, how helping Google understand that this article about mice is about a computer mouse and not a barn mouse. Subheaders will help, when done right, will help provide an outline to your content. Semantic HTML5 subheaders. Remember, go look for that article, read it, understand it. Image file names, titles and alt text. Those all help with optimization, but you can't force them in and make it spammy because, again, that works against you. think about the human visitor there and making sure that what you're titling that image, what alt text you're giving to that image is actually representative to what that image is, so it helps everybody involved. Meta titles and meta descriptions, when they're written well, they will help people see them on the search engine results page, entice them to click through to your website or blog. It's your first opportunity to start selling to people before they ever even reach your website. You want those to be clean, cohesive, concise, not spammy, but include your keyword phrase. All of that, which is helping the user, which also helps SEO. And then finally, you want to have very smart and savvy internal linking. I've done a whole webinar on that. That's on my YouTube channel. If you don't know the power of internal linking, know this. They're the superheroes of SEO. So if you have no idea like what I'm talking about with that, I want you to go to my YouTube channel for Rebecca Gill. I want you to watch that webinar. It was 60 minutes long where I talk about the power of links. Internal links are very powerful. They can help or break your SEO efforts. And I'll tell you that 95% of websites get it wrong. So if you can be part of the 95%, or excuse me, the 5% that can get it right, it's going to definitely help your SEO efforts. Okay, so hat tip, internal links are the unknown superheroes. I'm referencing that again because it's so important. You need to learn how to use them because they will help you rank and they will help Google better understand your website or your blog. All right, so when you click publish, remember it is not the end of your SEO journey. You need to spend time link building and pushing that out in social media, because great content won't matter if nobody finds it, right? And Google looks at social media metrics to help it figure out the importance of you and your content. We want to create multiple paths into our website or blog, and every share that you have, whether it be a link or whether it be social media, helps. And a hat tip for this is authority matters to Google, right? Be present online so that Google can understand somebody other than your mom or your best friend or your dog cares about your content. It's one of the reasons why I'm here today, right? Kori was talking about me online. Hopefully she's linked over to me from her website to one of my websites, which gives me that goodwill back, and which helps Google understand that Kori cares about me, right? And so it's really important that you make yourself present. And I'm not telling you to go chase backlinks, because I don't do that. I just give freely of myself and of my knowledge so that those will come naturally to me. All right, so when you're all done juggling the keywords and the content and links, I want you to remember to spend time doing some analysis. Look at Google Analytics and Google Search Console. Figure out what worked, what didn't work. Review them to look at, say, why did this work over this one? What did I do differently? Is my content longer? Is it better structured? Did I have a more precise keyword phrase? Did I share this on social media? Were there internal links right? What did you do right to make it rank? And then take that knowledge and apply it to the rest of your website or your blog. You would be surprised how important that is. This is how I taught myself SEO. This is how I competed against really large websites like SAP and Oracle and Microsoft, and how I beat them in search. It was because I took the time to figure out what worked, and I took that knowledge and I engineered it back into the rest of my stuff. Okay, so my hat tip, and I think it's one of my final hat tips, is what are my favorite tools? My favorite tools are Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Bing Webmaster Tools. Yes, Bing does have a Webmaster Tools, and you should be using it. I can't live without SEMrush. I like SpyFu. I love DinoMapper, and Screaming Frog is a great plugin that's free that will get you, not plugin, piece of software that's free that will get you going with search. All right, so that was everything that I wanted to cover. I am open for questions. I think I hit it right on 145, which was my goal. I can't believe I actually had the goodness to be able to do that, but I've covered my slides. What questions do we have from everybody? I'm happy to answer them.
Outstanding. We actually do have quite a few questions. I'm so excited to get to these. Let's see. So Bernadetta said, how important is schema markup right now?
So schema and structured data is very, very important. Not every website is going to have a big usage for structured data and the usage of schema, but it is important. So for those of you who do not know what schema is and structured data, so schema is a universal language. that multiple places on the web use not just Google, not just Bing, but it's multiple pieces of functionality and websites and things like that use this language to better articulate what content is about. And the best way to explain this is, so Google is virtually, it has its own accessibility issues. It's kind of like a toddler. It doesn't go to a website and see what we see, right? We see colors and links and images, and we see the full depth and breadth of the website. Google doesn't. It sees binary, zeros and ones. But when you bring schema into the mix and it's used within structured data, which is a common, again, language and code set, it can better understand a website. So instead of just going to the MGM website and going, hey, it's the MGM website, great, I see text. Instead, it sees it like a human does. It says, oh, I know this is about a hotel. I know there's accommodations. Oh, there's an image. Oh, this is the organization. Here's the rooms that are available for this week. Here are the prices for these dates. Oh, and there's Madonna's going to be in concert. There's an event that's going on. It's like this big, wealth of information that is available to Google to quickly understand and use. That's what structured data is. It's great for local SEO. It's great for products, reviews, and then you can have all of these different, more complex uses for it. But again, it's not going to be available and used by everybody, and you need to make sure that it pertains to you and you implement it right, because structured data enhances the web. Google has very little tolerance for when it's done wrong. So you don't want to just throw it up there and hope that you get it right. You need to make sure that you test it and everything before you actually deploy the code.
Outstanding. All right. Mark came in and he had asked a question. You might have answered it, but I just want to touch on it briefly. He had said, what type of software did you say places the seed list and for the search volumes? And I think you had mentioned, was it KW Finder?
I use KW Finder. I love KW Finder because it allows me to import and export and things. So there's actually on my Web Savvy Marketing site in the blog, there's a post I did probably a year ago that actually went through like 30 different keyword search tools and software packages. And I give you a grid of analysis for each one. And then I tell you why I picked the one that I picked. And mainly for KW Finder, import, export, I can do regions, countries, city areas like Greater Atlanta. And it really gives me a lot of good information. Also will show me some metrics on who's ranking on page one, so I can figure out the true difficulty level of a specific keyword phrase.
That is a great resource. I love that one. All right. Another question from Bernadette says, in Yoast, we have a place to put in a keyword for a page. I heard you mention that we can associate perhaps more than one keyword per page. Do you know how we might do that?
So yes, so in Yoast, with the free version of Yoast, you can only do one focus phrase, right? And keep in mind, just because it's not, a keyword doesn't going to rank just because it's in Yoast. That's only used for you internally. You can rank for 500 keyword phrases and never use Yoast. But if you want the Yoast tool to help guide you along the path, you need to buy the premium version so it allows you 5 different tabs and 5 different keyword phrases. Now, for you, if somebody's starting out with SEO, don't do that because it's going to be overkill and it's going to confuse you. Start with one phrase, get yourself done with one phrase, win on one phrase, figure out what you did right, and then move on. Like my online SEO course that I have, I teach you one-to-one, one keyword phrase to one URL, and that's because I want you to start small so you can figure out what is right, what's wrong, get your knowledge down, and then once you have your knowledge down, then you can expand out to more keyword phrases per URL.
Outstanding. All right. Christine says, and she gave me an extra follow-up. So let me get through this one and see if I can clarify for you. Is there a difference between an SEO marketer and someone who actually optimizes a website? Or is there such a thing or person as an SEO marketer? Is there a difference between an SEO marketer and an internet marketer? What I've heard is that a true SEO person is someone who actually optimizes a website, brings the content to life to search engines, and an SEO marketer cannot do that. And she followed up just to bring some clarity. She said that a true SEO person is someone who actually optimizes a website, which is the website designer who brings the content to life to the search engines. An SEO marketer cannot do that.
So there, I've heard the phrase online marketer, which would be a much broader set. That could be SEO, that could be pay-per-click, it could be social media. That's going to be much more broad. Then you've got SEO. SEO can be on-page SEO, where someone's very focused on content marketing. It could be somebody who's focused on technical SEO, which is completely different. That's more about the code and the site structure and the architecture and even your back-end performance of that server and that server configuration. You could have somebody who's very focused on none of that, but be focused on like structured data and that type of activity. So there's not going to be one broad phrase or one term that's going to be the end all. All of us have our own unique talents, right? I'll be honest with you. Google Tag Manager scares the snot out of me because it's more technical and nobody lets me in the code. They haven't let me in the code for a really long time. So I'm not real, stellar with Google Tag Manager. However, I'm great at education. I can be amazing at creating content ideas and editorial plans and optimizing that and really get into the heart of that. We all have our expertise, and don't discount or buy into someone, based on a title. Drill deeper into what is their specialty, what's their area of focus, because I think that's going to give you a much better idea of their worth.
That is stellar advice. I love it. So one more question here. How important is that readability tab inside of the Yoast plugin?
Okay, so that's just trying to get you to make sure that your content flows, that somebody can easily read it and digest it. But keep in mind, so that plugin it's binary. It's just an algorithm based on, data and numbers and things like that. It can't be smart enough to say, in this post, Rebecca is talking about purple kitties and what happens when you dye your cat purple. But in this post, she's actually talking to astrophysicists and she's talking about space and rockets and missiles. It doesn't understand the difference. Now, the readability factor for a post about missiles is going to be completely different than the readability factor for a post about dyeing my cat purple, right? It can't tell the difference. So, I put very little weight in that because it is just a binary tool and it can't make a judgment call on that. You want to make sure your content flows. And if you have an average website that talks about average things, yeah, you can pay attention to that tool because it can help guide you if some of your stuff is choppy. If you've got a technical website and it's serving a B2B audience or science-based or something mathematical, you're never going to score on that tool because, and that readability, because it's never going to be right. Because it's too complex of a subject to be able to bring it down to the average level and have everything flow perfectly.
All right, we have another question that came in that says, I've heard some people will bold or italicize the keyword throughout the content. Is that helpful?
That would be spam, and that is a tactic from about 10 years ago. Don't do that.
There you go. Don't do that. Okay.
Don't be that guy.
Awesome. Another question is a plugin like an all-in-one SEO pack worthwhile? So I believe that is the name of a plugin, the all-in-one SEO pack. Is that worthwhile?
So all-in-one, the SEO plugin is produced by two developers who I personally know, have dined with. They're excellent gentlemen. Is it good? Yes, it is a high quality plugin, right? They do know what's going on. It is written differently than the Yoast SEO plugin is. All-in-one is more technical based, and it's not going to give you that focused keyword phrase. It's going to try to keep you from competing with yourself and creating keyword cannibalism. That's not the purpose of that plugin. It's more technically based. I like Yoast better because it helps serve the average user. It gives you good technology and it keeps you on track if you're listening to the prompts so that you don't kill off your SEO and you don't compete with yourself. Others than that, I would question who wrote the plugin. What is their background with the SEO? Do they know SEO? Do they have a consultant on staff who stays up to date with SEO and what's happening in the industry? Because if they don't, you need to be cautious of it.
Excellent advice. You know, a lot of my listeners are freelancers who have clients. So I'm going to throw in a question here just in our last few minutes to see if you can help them, Rebecca, with a little bit of education that they might be able to pass along to a client. Because what I've found is a lot of freelancers or developers out there who create a website for a client and launch it, you know, within a few weeks, the client's already Googling themselves, trying to find them on page one, and then they immediately explode and say, "You didn't build my website correctly," and "Oh, why didn't you do it right?" So, could you help us maybe with a reality check right now of how we can educate our clients on expectations for launching a rebuilt website versus a new website, or even industry standard?
So I'll tell you first and foremost what Google recently said. If you go and you make changes throughout the website, maybe it's a redesign, maybe you've gone through and you've cleaned up all the accessibility and all the bad coding and everything else, how long is it going to take Google to actually figure that out and produce ranking increases for you? They say up to 6 months for them to truly see that, because it's across the website, to digest it and to modify your ranking based on it. That's a really long time. Well, what if you just make changes to one URL? Say you've got a blog post that's written in 2014, it was 300 words. Now you've completely revamped it and now it's 2,000 words and it's really focused and it's really good. Could that be 6 months? No, that's not going to be 6 months. That could be more like a week, but it's going to be different for different websites, because it's going to make it, the difference is how often does Google come back to your website to crawl and digest your content? What authority do you have? You know, are you considered authority in that market? Are other people, you know, sharing that content? So Google keeps seeing it now on search and in activity of web users. There's no universal number, but I will tell you, I've redesigned websites with SEO in mind. We've seen lifts within 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks. We've had some where it's taken longer because nothing ever happened to the website for 5 years before that. And to Google, it was sleeping, right? So there is no universal answer. You know, it's up to you as the consultant to set those expectations. What you need to make sure your clients understand is, and this comes directly from Google, SEO is about making incremental changes to your website that individually do not seem like they would have an impact, but brought together, they make it easier and better for humans and for search engines. That is the nature of SEO. It's incremental changes over time. And that's what you need to educate your clients on. SEO is it's not a race. It is a journey that you continue for the life of the website or the blog.
It is very rare that I ever get a client that comes along and says, "I'm in this for the long haul." You know, I understand that organic is the right way to do it. You know, it's very rare. Every once in a while we get a client that comes along like that. And I'm very thankful for their understanding that it can take time, right?
Yeah.
We have one last question coming in here. Does Google rescan higher ranking sites more often than lower ranking sites, or are they pretty much all the same?
They are definitely not all the same, but it's not necessarily the rank that is going to dictate how often Google comes back and crawls it and, you know, digests the content. It's more about how often you are making changes to your site, how active your site is. You know, does Google need to come back and see your site because you change it daily? Or has that site been sitting the same for 5 years and Google knows it only has to come back once every 5 weeks? Those are the indicators on how often Google comes and how often, you know, it visits and digests. You can do things to help, you know, push that along. You can make sure that your XML sitemap is linked up to Google Search Console, that it's clean, that you have traffic coming into your website from other places on the web. That helps you get crawled more frequently and your content reviewed more often.
And one last question sneaking here right at the end that says, how do I know when Google even visits my site?
You can actually see that information in Google Search Console. It'll give you metrics on how often Google comes, how long does it spend there, and that type of thing. It's the crawl report.
You're amazing. I love this. I learned stuff in this session. I'm so excited to have you join us, Rebecca. Thank you so much. And you guys, I'm just going to challenge you to reach out to her, tweet to her, follow her on Twitter if you guys want to know when she's doing webinars, when her next boot camp is. She's got do you have anything coming up right away? I thought I heard about something happening maybe in September with you.
So I have an SEO mastermind that is starting in September. I have 2 sessions, one for developers who want to sell SEO, one for people who want to learn the foundations of SEO. Each group is only 10 people and applications are open to come into that. I have a webinar that's free coming up in September with Pat from Crowd Favorite. We're going to be going through performance and optimization because that's really important. For websites and for SEO. So that's free to join. He knows so much more about that than I do, which is why I'm bringing him in. And you can find the link to that on RebeccaGill.com under the events section. I'm trying to think of what else. I'm speaking in Chicago at a blogging conference in September, I think, too. But there's always stuff I've got going on with opportunities for education. And the best place for finding that is RebeccaGill.com or the Launchpad on Facebook, which is the bottom link on this slide.